It looks like I was actually mute. let me let me introduce myself again. This is African Queen Mo coming from the beautiful city of Nairobi, and again we're happy to come live on the show with you today again. I'm here with Susan, who is my colleague, and she'll be joining us in a few minutes. And today we have a very interesting topic. It's about balanced marriages and about the question about independence versus interdependence. As you know, marriage has been on the lips of many people. There's been a lot of what we would call negative energy towards marriages, especially on social media. And it's very unfortunate because, in fact, if it wasn't for the fact that some people chose to take on a long lasting union and relationship, most of us would not be on this planet. Okay, so let me introduce Susan and allow her to come in and join us on the studio.
Hello,
Hi,
everybody.
hi, Fia. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm greeting.
Hi, how
Both
are
of you
you?
came on at the same time.
Yeah.
Both of you came on at the same time. So
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out who to say hi to first. Hi, Fia. Hi, Susan. Fia is joining us. Yeah, Fia is joining us from the UK. Welcome, Fia. Oh, I'm looking forward to hear your views, especially on this issue of balanced marriages. The difficulty that we experience, in achieving balance in marriage. One of the most difficult things. Well, I'm a married woman of 10 years now. Wow, I can't even believe how time flies. 2014 until now, 2025. Going 11 years this year, which is amazing. And I really thank God for that. It's been a bumpy ride. I'll be honest, it's been a bumpy ride. Why? Because a lot of my marriage time has been LDR, which is long distance relationship. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but I'll allow Susan to introduce herself. And yeah, so we can go from here.
Yeah. Greetings from Nairobi, Kenya. Yeah, we're discussing something, an interesting topic, and we hope you'll all engage with us.
Yeah. So, emotional intimacy. Okay. We're talking about emotional, physical, spiritual intimacy. Okay. Versus independence and autonomy and being able to keep your identity, you know, in marriage. One of the most difficult things when it comes to marriage, I must say, and I must admit, based on my few years experience, there are people who have been there for much longer, is trying to be true to self while also ensuring that I also engage, share with another person, you know? And that is always going to be a dichotomy. It's a balance because the fear of losing self is real in marriage for many women, especially when they get older, married a little bit older, once they have already experienced and understood what it means to, to live alone, to make their own decisions, to be autonomous, to be self-reliant. And when you're coming from that position, to leave it and to discard it and to say I'm going to be dependent on another person is one of the most biggest challenges in marriages. And I can say that on a personal level because I got married in my 40s, by the way, guys. So you can calculate how old I am now. Huh? Yeah. So I got married in my 40s for the very first time. And it was after being a single mom for over 20 years. So, what I can tell you is that during my single mom, when I was a single mom, I really enjoyed actually being a single mom. Not at the very beginning, it was too difficult. It was really hard at the very beginning. But once I started to get family support and I had balance in my single mom life, I actually enjoyed it. But got to a point where my son was now leaving the household and I was finding myself facing the walls and it was looking empty and I was starting to feel empty. And even before that, I was on a mission to try to find a partner, but I was trying, different relationships and they were working and not working. You know how it is with relationships, how hard they are. But my ultimate goal was always to have a lifelong partner. And I truly feared aging, going into the elderly life without a partner, somebody to share with, especially because I'm a talkative person. I like chatting. So I like to engage and to be close to somebody else, So that was very important. But I was also worried about losing my independence. I really was. And I'm talking about this from a personal level because I can. I can. And we don't all have to talk from our personal level, personal experiences. But I would love to hear from you guys, what was your experience when you got married? Did you get married when you were young? And if you did get married, and if you didn't get married, what was your decision? Why did you decide not to get married? Did it have anything to do with your autonomy or your independence? And or was it difficulty in terms of creating an interdependence with another person? Because again, when it comes to traditional upbringing, the way we're brought up with religion, culture, and also expectations when it comes to your parents, there's a lot of that concern about trying to balance that need to not be reliant on another person while at the same time having to be reliant on another person, especially if they happen to be older than you. So under normal circumstances, women usually get married to older men, right? So that usually means that the woman is less farther along on her career or her education, and therefore for some period there she would probably need to also rely on her husband or on her partner. And I remember there's one gentleman who told me that most women, because he's actually a vet, and he was saying based on the animal kingdom, the males should never be, or men should never be surprised that a female would want to choose the best, survival for the fittest, because that is the animal kingdom, and it continues even into the human kingdom. Women will always seek the best because one day she will be barefoot and pregnant and dependent on this man, yeah, for her very survival and for the survival of her children. So anyway, I think I've said enough. Maybe at this point, Susan, you'd like to take over and say some few things before we get right into the subject.
Yeah. When you talk about independence versus interdependence, I don't think it's a versus. I think it's a coexisting um, scenario in the context of a marriage, because at least a healthy marriage where uh, the partners respect the individuality or the interests of the other, and give them the voice in the home and all that. And then you know so and then the interdependence is when you depend on one another for different things, because there's always a division of responsibilities in the home and stuff like that. So I think it's a coexisting thing rather than a versus thing. But certainly, marriage is an institution that's recognized by many faiths: Christian faith, the Hindu faith, the Muslim faith, and we also have the civil marriages, and then we also have the traditional marriages. The ones, depending on where you're from, your culture may have a way of creating a marriage between two people, a male and a female. So basically, it's a recognized institution in human society. Um, so getting that balance when you have two people perhaps who have got into marriage at different ages. What we're seeing now is that people are getting married when they're older, in their 30s, or so, and around their 30s. That is what's happening. I think in the past people were getting married much earlier, but now it's taking longer. And the reason that the reasons given arguably are that education, people want to focus on their personal growth, so they want to get as much education as they can before they consider getting married. And then the next thing is work. They're looking at building an economic base. And then third comes marriage. So you find that people are getting married older and older. um, at least in Kenya, we've seen people getting married around their 30s. That's when you'll see them settling down and deciding that's the time to get married. And I think, for my opinion, I think people should get married around that age, because the psychologists say that um, we still go through adolescence. Yeah, a man who's 24 years old is still an adolescent. We're still going through, the stages of maturity, and likewise for women. So they're still children, and so you need to reach the age of about 30 years old to have that maturity, stability, and to be able to engage in a relationship with another adult. You see, one of the challenges is that we are dealing with people who are you're two adults in the home, and as Queen Mo said, depending on what stage you've got married, you may be very used to managing your own affairs. Um, and so you have to come to this point where you recognize your independence, and at the same time recognize the interdependence that is part of being a married couple. And sometimes those tensions are the things that can cause a lot of um, trouble um, at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So some of the, so I think we can continue
Mhm.
to, as we go on, we can look at some of the challenges to the marriages, and why people are finding it even more and more difficult. We're getting movements like Queen Mo was saying, that are not pro marriage. You can see they're actually against marriage, and this is something that we're concerned about, because we know that many societies, um, even the Asian societies and all that, children are raised within the context of a marriage. The percentage of children born outside the the marriage or intimate partner relationship is very low in some countries.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it means that marriage as an institution for the continuity of the human race is actually something that needs to be taken really, really seriously. Over to you, Queen Mo.
Yeah, that's really true, Susan. I mean, starting with your last point, that there is a societal attack against married couples and against marriage. And a lot of social media, what they call influencers, creators, are actually making a living talking against marriage, completely against it. If you go on TikTok, it's all about 1,000 reasons not to get married. And if you do get married, then at least avoid having children. Yeah, don't bring children into the world. Don't bring children. I mean, if you can't stay away from him, then just don't bring children into the world. Yeah, these are 1,000 reasons not to get married. And others are there talking about avoid marriage. Married women should understand that they are not, that they're sharing their husbands with other women, that you're not the only one. You're not the most important person in his life. Yeah. And you are actually a slave. So there's a very negative, toxicity around the subject of marriage right now on social media. And people who are in married situations, in, at least healthy marriages, really it is our responsibility to push back against this tide, because it's a tide, it's a wave, it's going to influence a lot of young people. And the worst thing about it, the way I look at it, is that it will actually steal people's time. There are many things that steal our time. Like I would say, right now, let me give an unrelated issue. Right now, tomorrow is the last day of TikTok for the US people. People who are living in the US are right now grieving. They are refugees, and they're transferring to another thing called Red Book or Red Note. I believe it's either Red Book or Red Note. Also, another Chinese app. They're transferring there. And why are they doing this? Because this is a community. This has been their community, TikTok. It is also their source of revenue for their businesses. For many people, they have made a living from there, but also they have learned so much about the world. And one of the things that they have been able to debunk is the myth that China is a bad country, that the Chinese are not good people, that China is a backward country, that America is the best country in the world, that there are no benefits from visiting countries such as China or living there, that China is an oppressive country. And now, when they went on, to, many of the refugees, they call themselves TikTok refugees. So when they went on to Red Note, they are now looking at shopping halls, food halls. The Chinese are showing them how much they pay for their groceries, what kinds of cars they drive, what kind of phones are available. Like, amazing technology that is available in China. China is hundreds of years ahead, light years ahead of the US in many, many ways. Yeah. And things like not being having to pay things like your taxes, no taxes against on your mortgages. Once you have actually owned your home, it's your own. No taxes on the cars. No, once you bought a car, it's your own. No more tax. That kind of thing. The things that we're used to paying, they're starting to realize that actually a lot of their lives have been taken away from them because of propaganda and being misled, okay, by some sort of traditional beliefs systems that have been actually inculcated by the leaders who are only interested in making money for themselves. So this is the same thing now that is happening. The way I look at it, this wave, first of all, it came as a wave of LGBTQ, okay? Alternative sex, what do we say? Sexuality. Okay. And now they've moved beyond that to now actually attacking directly the marriage institution and married people and making a mockery of people who get married and people who choose to have families and to have children. Okay. Highlighting relationships that are failing and relationship experiences that have been negative and highlighting those against all the successful, happy, working relationships all over the world, which are evident with your eyes. I mean, which your eyes can see in every society. I'm talking about, all societies all over the world. People are married, they have children, they are not perfect, but they are there. So the whole idea of saying do not have children, do not get married, all that is a way to steal the opportunity of young women to actually decide to have children of their own. And that is a very, very dangerous thing. Super dangerous. And all I can say is that I am here to push back against that. And I believe that marriage is one of the most important, most fundamental institutions. The same China that Americans are now looking at and admiring and wishing for is actually built on married couples. It's the backbone of that society is the family, and they have extremely strong family ties. Anybody who follows TikTok knows of this Ugandan lady who married a Chinese guy in China. Yeah. And her name is Rose Ananzai. I think if you're not on TikTok, you should go and watch them. I think they also probably would be on YouTube. Rose and Anzai, they are married. They are a married couple, Ugandan and Chinese, and they now have two lovely kids, a boy and a girl. And one of the things that is highlighted mostly by the Rose and Anzai relationship is the family and the community around them. And their entire community around them is full of singles, married people, elderly people, aunties, uncles. Everybody is either an auntie or an uncle. And what is so beautiful about that relationship that you see there is that it actually goes beyond the couple to the entire community and society. The safety net that Rose has in that community is admirable all over the world. It's a very positive relationship. Yeah. So what I want to say is that we cannot be looking at our lives through the lens of a person who has failed. All of us, like for example, I can say I have failed. I had failed in previous relationships. It did not work. Yes, I was hoping to get married at one time or another. Yeah, but it didn't work. But eventually it did. You see, it doesn't mean that I have to judge. When I was a single mom, I used to look at married couples. Yeah. And I used to look and see the ones that were doing well and the ones that were not. It was obvious to the naked eye. I could hear it. I could hear them complain, or I could see people who were actually trying to get along. I could see others that were limping along. But all in all, it didn't make me judge marriage and say, oh, all marriage is bad, don't do it, or advise anybody not to do it. Because I knew I had my own personal reasons for why I thought that marriage was going to be good for me as an individual. And the only regret I have is that I got married much later, because now children are not an option. Having biological kids is not an option. But if I was to do it again, I would say I would marry young, much younger. Yeah, but I would hope that I would have had a lot of good counseling from older people and from married people. Married people should share their experiences, so that now, otherwise, the whole narrative is going to be taken up by the woke people out there, and before you know it, marriage is going to be completely, thrown in the bin. Yeah, but it's very important. First of all, one of the biggest problems with people, the reason why a lot of marriages fail, or relationships, the reason why a lot of relationships fail is because people are not mature enough. Either the female or the male is not mature enough, yeah, to handle the relationship. Yeah, maturity is very important. Emotional maturity is very, very important. I can say that when I was much younger, I used to fly off the handle. I couldn't deal with emotional issues very well. I'm not talking about getting angry, but what I'm talking about is getting super sensitive over issues. Overthinking and overreading into things that happen. Yeah. So when I was much younger, I don't think I could have sustained a marriage. Why? Because everything a man said, I would dissect, you know, with a magnifying glass to see. What does that? What did he say what did he mean when he said that? Why did he do that? Why did he go there without telling me? Why did he treat me like that? Why did he forget my birthday? Why did he, treat me? Okay, why did he talk to me with such a loud voice? Why did he shout? Why did he, those kinds of things? You won't believe this. I would be even looking at a guy and say, oh, well, I'm not so sure. He's not exactly my height. He needs to be a bit taller. I don't care how nice he is. He needs to be a bit taller than me. He's not my height. Stupid things. I was looking at superficial things that mean nothing now. But when I got married, when I was older, I looked at things that were important to me. And I know that that is what sustained me. And I think maybe because of the experiences that I had earlier, I'm now a much better wife, because my patience level is up there. Because one of the things that one has to do is to, um, when you're in a relationship, one of the things that one has to do is actually to tolerate a lot. There's a lot of tolerating, and a lot of, you have to give people space to grow up with you. You all grow together. Yeah. And part of growing up is making mistakes. Sometimes you can make a mistake. You have to be willing and flexible enough to forgive a mistake if it was genuine. And if you think that that mistake is not one that is harming you physically, you have to be willing to let the person, be. If the person is showing moodiness and things like that that irritate you, or let's say they're ignoring you, or maybe they're not maybe working the way that you want, they're not working as hard as you want, I think one has to nurture each other. It's an opportunity to nurture, because you have to build your communication skills. They talk about communication, but communication is easy to talk about rather than to do. Communication means that you're willing to listen to the other side. Communication means that you're willing to do something for another person, for your partner, rather than to talk. You can do something that makes them understand that you're communicating something. So, like, do something nice, like make a nice meal for them, or take them out, or buy them something. Yeah, to communicate. So, communication doesn't just mean talking the way I'm talking, rambling here. It could also mean just doing something, being there for them. So communication is extremely important, and there's verbal, non-verbal communication. You can communicate with gifts, with doing good things, doing good deeds to another person. You can communicate by apologizing. You can communicate by giving a massage, rubbing their shoulders, going out, spending time together. There's so many ways that you can communicate with another person. And if you're upset with that person, there's another way you can communicate through a third party. You can get a third party to talk to your partner if you trust that third party and you know that that partner respects that third party, and that that party is one that is uh, for your relationship, is there for your relationship, not against it, and is not jealous of your relationship. So for example, if I am upset, there's, if I'm really truly upset with my husband, for example, I'll let you in, I can talk to one of his very best friends and say, would you please talk to my husband and tell him I'm not happy about XYZ? Yeah. And the guy would go, why? What should I, what happened? Yeah. And I'll tell him what happened. He says, okay, I'll talk to him. And he does. And you know, the good thing, my husband listens. He listens to his friends. So sometimes you can talk to your partner and you're not getting through to them, but you can tell someone that he respects, someone that you know that he'll listen to, the problem that you have, and you talk to him, maybe he'll communicate it better. And the same thing, that my husband could probably talk to one of my girlfriends and tell him the same thing, but it might not work that well. It's easier to trust a man to talk to your man, yeah, than to expect, your husband to talk to your husband. Maybe can talk to maybe your sister or your brother, somebody who doesn't have any sort of emotional ties to your partner, to you. So communication is number one on the list when it comes to a marriage. Another thing is also to be realistic. Be realistic with life. Also identify problems based on whether they're coming from the internal, whether problems are internal to your relationship or external to your relationship. So, for example, if you're having financial difficulties in your marriage, look at them and evaluate them very carefully. Are these financial relationships things that are in your direct control, or are they outside of your direct control? Yeah. And if they're outside of your direct control, then the two of you are a formidable force that should tackle the issue independently. So that becomes the enemy of your marriage, not your partner. If it is internal and it's maybe one of your partners who's a spender or somebody who doesn't want to work, that's another thing. Yeah. And that's something that can be corrected internally. But I think a lot of the challenges that come into marriage these days are coming from the outside. It's outside forces against the marriage. So that should actually strengthen the marriage situation, strengthen the relationship, and help you to be a formidable force against what is outside. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, Louis is saying dating your parents is a phrase that metaphorically describes a situation where someone is romantically involved with a partner who strongly resembles their own parent. Yeah, okay, interesting, interesting, Louis. Resembles or
Yeah.
behaves. Yeah, yeah, it's possible. I think our first loves, if you grew up in a healthy family situation, your first love is usually your father or your mother. It's the Oedipus complex, So it's not unusual for one to identify maybe somebody, maybe when you're looking for a partner, either consciously or subconsciously, you'll be looking for somebody who has certain traits that you have seen growing up that work, because that's your first source of inspiration for marriage, your partner, your parents. And if your parents did not have a good relationship, then maybe your aunt or somebody else that whose relationship you saw working could be an inspiration. Like, I can tell you that in my family, my father and mother's relationship was an inspiration to my cousin. Believe it or not, my cousin and his wife. Yeah, his late wife now. Yeah. But my parents' relationship. So my cousin who's a male, always used to spend a lot of time with my parents, my mom and dad. Um, they used to spend a lot of time together as couples. Yeah. My father and mom, and that was before I even got married. My father and my mother and my cousin and his wife, they used to spend a lot of time together because my cousin was trying to emulate my parents' relationship. Yeah, because he didn't have, in his family, his parents were divorced. Yeah, so he didn't really see that as positive. He needed an anchor. He needed someone. So he had my dad. And in my marriage, my dad and mom's, yes, it could be partially because I knew them better. There was some things I didn't like. Okay, because I knew them. I was very internal to the relationship. But the only one thing I did pick up from them is standing by each other, regardless of the challenges of that came across. That my parents were always together. They spent a lot of time together. They did fun things together. They traveled a lot together. And a lot of the time, they were always standing for each other. I think I was lucky that way. But apart from them, there's also the grandparents. The negative relationships that I also saw also were an inspiration to tell me what not to do or who not to choose, what kind of partner not to choose. Yeah. So you can learn from good marriages, you can learn from bad marriages.
Yeah,
Susan,
I just,
Susan,
I just, yeah, I just want to share some reasons why marriages fail. I was looking at just doing some research, and the first one is financial challenges. Um, who makes what? Who's supposed to pay for what? So if that situation is not handled well, if it's mishandled, um, the financial, it becomes a problem, a big elephant in the room, and can cause a lot of tension. So those are economic factors. Um, especially if one of the partners loses their job and the family is not able to readjust because the income that was coming from that person's work is no longer there. So sometimes this causes a lot of tension. Uh, you know, the second one is little or no time for each other. This affects intimacy. It affects partners knowing one another. It affects that dynamic of interdependence, which is, I think, crucial to a marriage or intimate partner relationship. And then the third one is infidelity. uh, it's something, again, actually in marriage counseling, one of the things they say and warnings they give couples is that infidelity is a no-no. It's something that can really, really break marriage. People find it very difficult to forgive one another when that has happened in the context of a marriage or intimate partner relationship. Then the other one is intimacy issues. Those are issues of sex. Um, there could be some issues, between the partners. It's an unmet need, or it's, there's no balance in that area, and that could cause tensions. The fifth one is difference in parenting styles. And this actually is quite serious because, giving different instructions on how a child should be raised, it can actually cause a lot of tension within a family and actually bring the couples to divorce. Um, for instance, if one of the partners has certain behaviors which are not good for the children, and the children start to emulate those behaviors, uh, and as a parent, you feel that that is putting your children at risk, it will actually bring the marriage to a close. The other one is the domestic violence and abuse. Um, and of course, we've talked about these scenarios in previous shows about the behavior uh, between parties. How do they resolve conflict, or is it is it your culture that has sort of determined that, is that you treat your spouse in a certain way? Is it misogyny at play? Is it patriarchy that is at play, and results in domestic violence and abuse? Is it your nature? Is it your personality that is making you very uh, um, you're not intolerant of the other person? So your way, it's your way or the highway, and your way of resolving issues is to bully, either economically, psychologically, physically, even sexually. And actually, I was reading a study, and it was really interesting. It was saying that women who are raped at home by their husbands, they say that the men who go and rape outside, they start the raping in their homes. So they actually rape their wives at home, and then it manifests outside, and they're also, doing that. So this particular study, the lady had found that there was a connection. So they were what they are trying to do in that particular study. They were trying to find ways to reduce sexual offenses, or to detect it before it happens, and sexual offenses and violence in homes, and intimate partner violence. And so that was the study that they did. So domestic violence and abuse, that is one of the big issues. We've seen it splashed all over the social media, in our news, in our news stations, and this is a worldwide problem. Whether it's the States, whether it's India, whether it's Southeast Asia, Europe, it is a problem that is all over the world. And the other one is unmet expectations. And I think for the young people who are going into marriage, this is something that they really need to discuss in terms of what are the expectations before they get into marriage. Because what happens is that after you've got into the marriage, and those expectations that you have are unmet, it starts to cause some emotional distance and tensions in the home. So it's very important to establish this. And as Queen Mo said, you must be reasonable. Must be something that is reasonable, so that you treat one another with respect and with honor. The other one is character flaws. We talked about that. The ones that lead to domestic violence and abuse, the bullying, and all that. you know, and there's a saying, love is blind until marriage takes over. A very cynical statement there. But anyway, the character flaws that would cause a lot of tension, make that a highly toxic environment, one that nobody can thrive in, that sort of thing. People with personality disorders, people who are narcissistic, who are gaslighting their families, gaslighting their wives, right? The spouse, let me put it that way, because women can also gaslight, and just generally not behaving in a very good way. Um, uh, and also, when we're talking about character flaws, we're talking about addictions, addictive behavior that can really cause a lot of pressure and tension within a family. Queen Mo talked about gambling. There's also pornography. There's also, what's the other one? Gambling, alcohol, drugs, all those things that really mess up a person's ability to make good decisions. And all these things affect your family
Yeah.
very negatively.
Now,
And
even social media,
yes,
social
even
media
social media.
addiction can be
Yes,
an issue. Yeah. Hmm.
yes, and you're not able to sift it and say this is rubbish, or this does I don't agree with that. Let me not say use
Yeah.
the word rubbish, but I don't agree with that. I don't agree. You're just absorbing information without really
Yeah.
filtering it, and that's a
Yeah.
big
Also,
danger. Hmm.
some people are
Then
addicted
the
to
other
video, you know?
two
Some people are
video games.
addicted to
Yeah,
video games. Yeah. To the point
yeah,
where
to game.
have you seen stories where people are addicted so much to video games that they forget to feed the child? The
Yeah,
child is crying in the background, but they can't hear because they're wearing those big things.
the way that, yeah,
The wife has
very
left the
bad.
husband with the baby. The baby is starving, or they've been sitting in their little seat, or they've not been changed for hours. You know,
Yeah,
can
terrible.
all
So,
yeah, can all cause friction in
so some
marriage.
others, yeah, some others are family interference. A lot we get that, I think, in all cultures, where you can have what did Louis say, that you marry people who behave like your parents, but there are some others who, when they get married, the parents are also in the marriage, so they just cause your in-laws are in there and cause lots of tension. They bring a lot of confusion. Um,
Can we
they
stop? Can we hang on to that one for a little while? It's so important. That's a very important point right there. Yeah. We are
yeah,
talking about balanced marriages, independence versus interdependence. It's
yeah,
also, there's another word for, which is also enmeshment. When you're
yeah,
enmeshed, like a
yeah,
mesh, you're just enmeshed like this, like steel wool, like
yeah,
steel wire. Yeah. You're
yeah,
either enmeshed
yeah,
or you're completely estranged. You're estranged from your partner. So unfortunately, you can find that your partner is enmeshed with their family, either their mother or their in-laws, or
yeah,
other their friends. So you might find that your partner is even more friendly or closer to their mom, to their aunt, to
yeah,
their friend, to
yeah,
whatever, to their work environment, than to you as a spouse. and that they have more
Yeah,
influence in your marriage. Yeah. And that can be so difficult, especially in-laws. That could be a really big one. Now, let me just take
yeah,
Fia's comment over here.
yeah.
I asked Fia to give us. She says that what did Fia say? She said she married in her 20s. I married in my 20s. I think marriage has stages, and each stage comes with challenges. So I said, "Oh, really interesting. Fia has been married over 20 years. That one I can tell you." And she says, "You have to." So I asked her to explain, to unpack it a little bit for us. And she said, "You have to be compatible, and both partners should use professional counseling when faced with conflict." I agree with that. I agree totally with that, Fia, that compatibility is actually very important. And how do you know if you're compatible with your partner? I think compatibility is all about shared values. Shared values, the way you look at life should not be so different. Yeah. Like, for example, one of you'll find that some people will get married, and maybe they're marrying somebody from a different culture. And when they get married to that person, then they start to experience conflict because, for example, let's say an African woman gets married to a European man or a Western man or a man from the Western hemisphere. So he's come from to Africa, picked up his girl, they've had a beautiful wedding, but then now they're living together. And mom is calling on the phone from Africa saying, "Hey, my daughter, we haven't got any food in the household. Could you please send me some money?" And the husband says, "Look," and the wife decides, "Okay, yeah, mom, definitely, I'm going to send you something. Let me just talk to my husband, and then we agree how much we're going to send you." So she talks to her husband, and the husband says, "Hey, I married you, not you and your entire family. Okay." This is a situation now where you find people don't have shared values. And this can be a really big problem in a relationship. And it has happened to a lot of, especially marriages between, mixed race marriages, especially people coming from different cultures, should I say. Intercultural marriages can be very difficult this way because the expectation of the family, of the African family, for example, or Asian family, is that you married actually families. These are families getting married to help each other. But on the other hand, the Western society is more individualistic, whereas in the African tradition, they're more communal. Problems are to be shared and halved. So you're supposed to carry my burdens as an in-law. So that is one of the biggest things, and also the issue of bride price. Like, people would have the expectation that you're supposed to come out with a bride price, pay some money to the family, or give a gift to the family. But this other person feels like that would be equivalent to purchasing his wife. So he doesn't want to do that. For example, he's like, "No, I'm not getting into a transactional relationship with your family to give them money." You see, that's actually more of the extreme issues. So, for example, maybe you marry a person who really believes in a stay-at-home wife, believes a woman should stay in the home and look after the children, and he should go to work. And you, as the wife, maybe are highly educated. You were hoping maybe you could stay with the kids for a year, and then after that, you go out there and work and be independent. So there's this fight, this struggle for your independence, yeah, for your identity. You don't want to lose your identity in the marriage, and you feel overwhelmed by all these responsibilities of being a wife, of being a mother, or of being, a worker in the house, being a stay-at-home mom. It's a big responsibility for many women. And I think a lot of children grew up as what they call latchkey kids. So they came home to an empty household. Susan, we talked about that, I think, the last time. We talked about latchkey kids. In the US, latchkey kid means that a child comes home to an empty household and only has a key and puts it in the latch and opens it and comes into the house after school and finds nobody home. Those are called latchkey kids. These are children who have raised themselves. Many of them are now adults. And many people who grow up as latchkey kids have very negative attitudes towards relationships and towards marriage, especially. They believe that it doesn't work. and it harms children. And these are the people probably who are screaming, don't have kids. Yeah, if you get married, if you can't stay away from him, just don't have the children. It's because of maybe the suffering that they went through. Maybe they felt that they didn't get the attention that they deserved from their parents. And yeah, and what they need to understand, though, those latchkey kids, is that they have a chance to correct what was wrong in the last relationship. Because I believe that every family, whether you're a latchkey kid or whether you're a child who was abused by a parent, may be overly punished through physical punishment, corporal punishment in the home, you can change that when you do get married. You can decide that you're not going to be that person. You're not going to met corporal punishment on your child. I am a good example of that because my father meted corporal punishment on me. It was expected. Most of us, by the way, were quote unquote beaten. Were beaten. Many of us were beaten with belts, sticks, lashes. Some people had pots thrown at them, cooking sticks, whatever, slippers, anything that your parent had. I mean, would come to school and everybody would be sharing notes. Yeah, how did your weekend go? You'll be hearing this one telling you, oh, my mother was out there with a frying pan. Yeah, I was beaten with a wooden stick. I was beaten with a belt. We were all comparing notes because our African parents are tough. Yeah. So what
Yeah.
I decided to do is that when I became a parent, I decided I will not do that. I looked for alternative forms of discipline. Sorry, alternative forms of discipline because I felt that that was harmful to me. It harmed my relationship with my parents because I saw them as overly authoritarian. And this is why I say that when you're looking for a partner, you may decide to that there's some parts of your family that you like and other parts that you want to actually discard. And that's one of the things when I was looking for a partner, I really made sure that I looked for a partner who was soft-hearted towards kids. Yeah, somebody who would not actually punish a child physically. Because there are some people who fly off the handle. So you look for somebody who doesn't have a hot temper. And I didn't want that. I didn't want that. So Fia is saying here, she's talking about the different stages. She says there's the honeymoon stage. That's the first stage. Then there's at the beginning, and usually the honeymoon stage can last maybe 1 or 2 years if you're lucky. And then the second stage is when the children arrive. Yeah. Aha. And then the third stage is the careers and the schooling. When you're actually busy with your career and schools and shuttling children back and forth to school, that's another stage. And it's true because I've experienced that stage, all those three stages, the honeymoon stage, where you just think that your partner is just the best person and you're the happiest person, luckiest person in the world until you're rudely awakened by when the children arrive, because they were not my kids, they were his kids, and they arrived into the household and disrupted this honeymoon that we were really enjoying. It was a disruption, not a negative disruption, but it's a disruption anyway, right? And then there's the careers and the schooling. Yes, that is true. My husband is there trying to pursue his career, going back to school. People are going back to school. People want to do masters. People want to, okay. And your children are also going to school. Then you have the financial, like buying property and vehicles. That is actually true. Yeah. You're thinking about investments and you're now going into large purchases. That's another stage. All of these stages affect your relationship one way or another. Then you're looking after extended family, where you start becoming the sandwich generation. You're looking after children at the same time you're looking after your elderly parents. Okay, they call that the sandwich generation. And actually, right now, I'm in that sandwich generation, looking after my elderly parent. I think many of us are. And then coping with sickness and loss. I think I'm in that stage too. Yeah, where you yourself are getting ill, or maybe you're losing your spouse, or not spouse, maybe you're losing yeah, it could be your spouse, it could be your parent, you could be coping with losses. So marriage comes in different stages. And the question is, at what stage do most marriages disintegrate? What stage is the hardest and what are the challenges at each of these stages? And it's good for people to understand, look at your relationship and say, what stage am I in? And I think that all the stages are not mutually exclusive. You might be at your honeymoon stage and then you're suddenly at your coping with sickness and loss stage. And then you're back to careers and schooling. And then now you're back onto your honeymoon stage. So, you can go back and forth in the stages. It's just like grieving and loss. And then Fia is also saying that I wish Fia would come into this thing because she's very knowledgeable. She's talking about there's also the loss of income. Yes. You remember when we had COVID and many people lost their jobs and they lost their income? That was a very difficult stage for very many marriages. And we heard that there were many things happening in marriages, especially I was in the UK then. At that time, there was an escalation of domestic violence in the homes because many people were stuck with their abusers in the homes during the time when they could not leave their homes. So there was an escalation of domestic violence, and this became an issue for the government that they had to actually have a policy on it. Okay, and all of these actually have an effect on the marriage eventually, because you remember that all of these stages, depending on how well or how poorly you manage them, they all impact on your marriage. But I think the most important and overarching issue in your marriage is, why did you get married in the first place? To always remember the reason you got married, to try to look for what I can tell you is the coping strategy for all of these is to remember who you married. And then to remember that you're growing old together. And as you're growing older, you're changing. We never stay static. Yeah, we are changing physically as well as internally. Yeah, emotionally, physically, mentally, you're changing. So it's important to keep on bonding. I know my aunties are always reminding me, remember to keep that bond alive. Do things to bond you, because you can lose that bond. For some of my aunties who are no longer married, when they look back, they're in their 70s, 80s now. The advice to me in my marriage is, remember that you need to bond with your partner. Don't allow yourself to stay away from your partner so much that you're not bonding. And you can stay away from your partner even without being physically away. You can be away from them mentally or spiritually. You can also be influenced by what is written, by what you're reading, by what you're seeing on the social media pages, especially TikTok, YouTube Shorts, all that negative energy around marriage and around relationships. What you consume, you are. You assume. Yeah, that's my saying. What you consume, you assume. You have to be very careful not to assume what you're consuming. Yeah, don't allow that to shape your view about marriage, because what's actually important is the truth. What is the truth? The truth is life is full of challenges, and you make a choice to go through the challenges on your own or with a partner. That's your choice. And if you find the wrong partner, yeah, the first time doesn't mean that that's the end of your life or that's the end of you ever being in a relationship. Yeah, it's really, it's because on the other hand, I always say to myself that you can only be responsible for yourself. You can only be responsible for how you behave towards your partner. You cannot be responsible for how your partner behaves towards you. And I don't think anybody should assume that responsibility. And that is what I always say. And I won't allow, another thing I always say to myself is, even if my partner mistreats me or treats me in a way that is undeserving, it doesn't mean I will do the same. I would rather walk out of that relationship than change who I am and become a bad person because this person is treating me this way. Yeah. And Fia is also saying that years ago, Lobola bride price was to say thank you to the mother of the bride. A small token was given, like some poultry, a cow, some money, and not anymore. That is very true. And that is in Zimbabwe. In Kenya, the same thing. Bride price is supposed to be a minimal amount that even the poorest person in the village can afford. That's how it used to be. And most people in villages always had cows and goats. So usually you'll see it's just like one cow and one goat. All of a sudden, people got greedy and decided that they're going to commercialize their daughters. And they become a source of bride price. But do you know, there's no society where there's no bride price. In the West, I always say the engagement ring is a bride price. It's a bride price. It's a sort of bride price. Because no marriage can go forward without that engagement ring. And the value of the ring is also kind of like tells people the value of the partner that you have. So the more expensive the ring, the more value the woman tends to feel she is. Yet it's just supposed to be, it could even be an heirloom, it could be a hand me down from a grandmother that may not have cost you anything eventually. It's not supposed to be a contractual exchange thing. Susan, let me talk.
I
Let me let you
remember.
talk. I've talked a lot.
I, I'm just when you're talking about sign of love. Although you can't really put a value on, you can't equate a value of somebody in a thing. I remember going for one of the conferences. I think, where were we? One of the West African countries, and our Nigerian counterparts were telling us, Kenyans, because we were wearing like beads, we were not, and they were wearing gold, and then they said, "Oh, your men don't love you. They buy you. What is this round your neck? The beads. Your men don't love you. Ours buy us gold. They have to buy us gold." But it's really not right to put the value of how much somebody loves you on material things. And then I think that's one of the areas where it starts to
That's
fail.
so true,
Um,
Susan. Yeah.
and we
I
should
experienced
really,
that as well in Nigeria. I experienced that when I went to Nigeria. I was wearing cheap earrings, cowrie shell earrings. The earrings that
yeah,
we have in
yeah,
Kenya, crafts. They're really handmade crafts, which we absolutely love here. And some of them are made of bone and brass and different things. And if you go to when I went to Nigeria those days, and even when I was around Nigerians in attending Nigerian parties as a student in the US, they would laugh the hell at us. They would laugh at Kenyans for wearing
yeah.
beaded jewelry or handmade jewelry. They would expect, and they are wearing gold, they are wearing
They're wearing gold. Yeah,
gold, they're
yeah.
wearing lace.
And I think that,
When you're wearing a simple
yeah,
outfit, they are wearing the most expensive George. They call it George and lace, that kind of thing. Yeah. So same thing, same experience.
yeah. So they would laugh at us, but I think let us really be careful about some of these things. When we're talking about unmet expectations, um, Queen Mo raised the issue of you know being a housewife, finding yourself as a housewife in their home. Some of these things are discussions one needs to have long before they get married. What do you expect from me, and what do I expect from you? Because if there's no agreement, that's definitely going to be a sore point in the home. If the lady expects to continue to work and then she discovers after she gets married that you don't expect her to work, and you want to take care of her, I mean that the man wants to go to work and the lady doesn't work. I mean those are issues that really need to be discussed, and otherwise you end up with unmet expectation. Of course, what happens when one marries in and one of the spouses travels a lot, and the family has to travel around with that person. One of their one the career of one of them will suffer as a result of all that, and that's a sacrifice that you find the spouses making. We're talking about independent and interdependence, especially those groups who have had to move to different those spouses couples who have had to move to different countries because of the work of, let's say, the man, and so the wife follows the man, and not follows, they go together, and the children are born in different countries and all that, and the woman is the one looking after the children. So that is an independent interdependent relationship, and it's important for the purpose of that relationship thriving. And you'll find many women taking a step back from their own career paths for that to happen, so that the family can be together, and making that sacrifice willingly, so that that can happen. And then later on you find them going back to school and establishing their own careers. And that's what you find in some situations. Other situations, of course, we find them just going really downhill. You know, we've heard of there's one other thing I perhaps I can introduce at this point is um, the experience of people who move to other countries to live in other countries away from the supportive network, and sometimes those relationships end up in disaster in the country where they've gone to settle, whether it's the US or England or wherever. They end up in real disaster, and they don't one of them doesn't make it out of that alive. So the dynamics within a marriage are very important, and one's personality really is key, one's commitment to it, is really key, and the growth. Like Pia said, there's the honeymoon stage and all that, and there's also that commitment really to make things work, and to find the right ways of communicating, the right ways of coping with stress, because when there's no money, there's likely to be stress and distress. How do you cope with it as a family, and stuff like that? Some of those issues need to be, really looked at. And I was looking at why the Gen Zs don't want to get into marriage, and one of them is fear of commitment. So they're afraid of commitment. They say it's too expensive to get married. It's out of reach uh, for them, especially aspect of children. They lack social and relational skills. And when you see that, and that is true. Um, these days, there's less pressure from society, religion, and parents for people to get married, and they just don't want to have children because they want to live their own lives. So this is basically some of the things. I know there was a joke, not really a joke, but a statement that the Gen Zs, the thing they fear most is the low battery on the phone, and pregnancy. So they don't really want to have children because they find there's a burden. They find that that's going to be not a burden, a restriction on their activities, on what they can do, and their ability, their mobility, their ability to move quickly from one space to another, to make decisions and stuff like that. Something else I came across, which I found really interesting, is that we're living in a different generation, and we're calling it the swipe culture. And people are relating to one another in a very different way. People are objectified rather than humanized. And for the men, they found proxies to a relationship. Uh, Mostly, majority, women also engage in things like pornography. So that's a proxy. And then for the women, they are very involved in social media, which is a proxy. So basically, the argument is that most people don't really want relationships because they found these proxies, and so they don't really need anybody else. And so that is something that is threatening the institution of marriage,
Yeah.
and something that needs to
Yeah, can I
needs.
say something
Mhm.
there, Susan? Absolutely. When you talk about swipe culture, objectification, and proxies, this is a very big threat to marriage. And it doesn't work because one of the proxies is dolls, Samantha doll. There's Samantha doll, which is like a doll that is like human like, but will talk even or behave and give you, sexual satisfaction. Although, of course, I don't know how it gives it back. Do you know what I mean? So there's proxies. The other proxy that can be used is actually animals, pets. Pets are being used as proxies of sorts. Pets are being used to kind of like fill the loneliness gap, for many people. And I feel sorry for these people because a pet is only what I call a band aid approach. It's a band aid approach. A pet cannot give you everything that a spouse can give you, a human being can give you. It can give you some, but it cannot give you all. It can't. It just cannot. It's not built for that. Another proxy that people do is purchasing of things, nice car, nice flashy car, buying nice clothes, jewelry, taking trips, going on holidays, and spending money, uh, doing YouTube videos. That's a proxy, filling your time with things that kind of deflect you away from that inner hunger for that thing to commune with another person. The swipe culture is about that objectification and kind of like looking at things that are on in a very superficial manner. Swipe culture means that you don't have time. You don't, love equals time. You don't spend time to get to know this person, or to get to understand your partner, the one that you chose. Yeah. And take time to reflect on the decision you made, and take time to reflect on who would be affected and what would be affected if you made a drastic move in either direction. Yeah. So I think, that swipe culture, objectification, and proxies, that is major and it's big. It's huge, and it's unfortunate that we're allowing it to take up. And we have a lot of very dysregulated people on the internet, people who have mental health issues, who are giving advice to people about marriage and staying married or not being married, people who have serious mental health problems, people who have been hurt in relationships, people who are narcissists also giving advice to people, and other people who really fear, who have anxiety issues, people who have serious anxiety issues, people who have mama issues, people who have daddy issues, giving advice to the general population who don't have, and the general population doesn't recognize that this person actually has a mental problem. There are others who are just there for the money. They're there to get the views. And with those views, they make money. And they make money by selling an idea. And bad news always sells more and faster than good news. Yeah?
Yeah.
Susan?
Yeah, I was just going to say, relationships, just in conclusion to that part, relationships are being replaced with simulated relationships. So for men, it's pornography, and for women, it's social media. And these are, it's really disturbing that we can be so engaged in things that are not real, so that human contact is missing. In fact, during the COVID closed up, shut down everywhere, where people were now working remotely and all that, you've not seen your workmates for for such a long time, and just seeing them on the screen. The normal engagement of an office, human engagement is missing in your life. I mean, there were a lot of mental health issues that were experienced by people. In fact, I remember them even being told, you need to get up, go dress up as if you're going to work, get into your car and start it, things like that, so that that routine is not lost. Even though you won't go to the office, just that routine being there. And for people who go to places of worship like the churches, um, in Kenya, the rural churches opened up much earlier than the ones in the cities, like in Nairobi. And they couldn't. In fact, the pastors in the rural settings, they said, we can't close our churches. Our people come here, this is a place where they come on Sundays, and this is the way they hear that we preach to them, so they have to come here. So that desire for human contact was really important. But he's finding a generation now who don't really who are satisfied with the proxies of they're not really interested in real intimacy or real human interaction and engagement, which is quite disturbing. And then, of course, you're saying that they're misleading people. You can see there's even a drop in morality. That issue of integrity. You're giving information which is quite toxic, without fear, and quite destructive at the end of it. And you're giving it to people where not everybody is able to filter that information, say, this is not for me, this is not right, and this is, there's something wrong with the logic in this, and that sort of thing, and keep away from it. I mean, we've had some shows where we've talked about the spread of toxic masculinity, and its danger and its threat actually to marriages, because even in that situation we saw marriages have actually been people have actually divorced because their husbands became these people who are engaging in the manosphere, in toxic masculinity, and it brought down the marriage and things like that. So the social media definitely is a real threat to many things, to our mental health, a threat to our relationships, a threat to marriages. Is a place where you can really, really get the wrong information. We've also done a show on the post-truth era. We're talking about how people are getting information on the social media, and ways to verify whether it is true or not, and the tests that we're supposed to engage in and interact with, because people don't care. They won't even call it a lie. It's been called misspeaking or alternative truth. And we know, if we're speaking clear English, alternative truth is a lie, but you're not allowed to say it's a lie. And this is my truth. This is my lived experience. This is my, all that subjectivity, which is causing a lot of problem in marriages. So as Queen Mo says, it the institution of marriage is a very important institution. It is one that has been there from the beginning of time, and it's one that is embraced by so many faiths and religions, even our traditional ones. That institution of marriage is there, and for it to be under threat now is something that is one of great concern, because it is there to perpetuate the continuity of the human race within a context of the family. Otherwise, we have people who are not really don't really know how to connect or to live in that unit, to interact within a family unit, to stand together, to have, um, a sense of, a connection and belonging. And the family unit gives support. It's a support system. It's a support system that is there. Um, you know, sometimes you watch these really tragic true stories or sad stories, just and you just imagine this person, the doctor is asking who's the next of kin, and there's nobody because the person was found somewhere on the street, rushed to the hospital, and the person who's saying, okay, I brought them, but I'm not related to this person. So a stranger, literally is the one who's there with you in the hospital. So let us really look at the value. And I believe that society is going to go back the other way. We've gone through a real season of wokeism, which has been, you know, like a roller coaster, mind boggling. You know, is it a Donald Duck moment where you shake your head to try to figure out, am I hearing right? Is it me confused?
Yeah,
Yeah. So
you're very correct, Susan. Yeah. You've said many important things, and like you said at the end, that um, all good things come to an end, including the facade that we can do without marriage. Okay, it's a facade, guys. It's a huge facade because we are born with this need for one another. We are polar opposites of each other, and we will always be magnetized towards each other. We are North and South Pole. Boom! Get together with a male, female, they have the opposite of who you are, complete opposite, except that, of course, they are trying to medically intervene and convert girls into boys, boys into girls. Look what's happening to Elon Musk's son. He's so sad about having lost his biological son, and he now says that he's dead to him because he turned into a female. He was turned using, chemically, he was turned into a female, and it's a big grief for him. He grieves over his son, over the loss of his son, because you see, we were built that way naturally. There's this prayers for purpose. I would like to read their comments, okay, before we go on. Loneliness comes, thank you, prayers for purpose. They say, loneliness comes with perversity, immoral thoughts and deeds, etc. It's a state of mind that now someone starts doubting themselves and even doing things that they never imagined. This leads to mental issues. Yep. And they also say, have never understood wokeism. If it's spelt right, it's wokeism. What is wokeism exactly? It sounds like people decided that they awoke. Resurrection, but in the wrong direction. Wokeism. What is wokeism? Yeah, that's a good one for Susan to tell us later. But like Susan was saying, that the family is a fundamental support system of society, and without it, without the family, even if the family has gone through a series of different definitions, yeah, the family has many definitions, that is true, but still it is the fundamental backbone of the society, and the healthier the family, the healthier the society. It's obvious, very obvious, because you see the societies that are doing well, China, India, and you see how strong families are in those countries. And the countries where they are broken, there's so many broken countries, broken Britain. broke in the US. Yeah? Because family disintegrated. Families are disintegrating. And why are we encouraging family disintegration? It's a big problem. You know, we need to understand two things. First of all, I also wanted to bring up this issue. Okay, Susan also talked about the fact that you might find yourself so isolated that there's nobody to come to your rescue when you need someone. Today I was actually watching a TikTok video where this guy was crying. A very big overweight man, actually. He looked older, but he said he was only in his 20s and he had lost his both parents. He said he's the last living member of his family and he's in his 20s. He's lost both his siblings, a brother and a sister, and he has also lost his parents. And now he worries that, if he died today, there'll be nobody coming to look for him because he's the last living member. I've never seen anything that touched me so hard because he's so young. He's only in his 20s. But he has nobody. Because why? Because we have destroyed the extended family. It should not be that because his father and his mother and his siblings all passed away, that there's nobody else in his family, that means that there's the last. What about his aunties, uncles, distant relatives? What about them? What about his friends? I ask myself, what about friends? Susan talked about the fact that young Gen Zs are struggling to make friendships. They don't know how to make friends because they're always behind their computers. I don't blame them, but they haven't built their social skills, and those are some of the reasons that Susan mentioned about why it is that people have decided not to get married. To me, that is actually spelling of fear. That is actually fear of interaction. People are afraid to be vulnerable with each other. Again, today I was listening to a gentleman on TikTok who was giving some education, although at some point I think he got a bit distracted. He was talking about emotional dysregulation and regulation. And that is one of the things that we need to really learn when we're young, how to emotionally regulate and our lives and ourselves, and to stop emotional dysregulation. Okay, which is talking at people instead of talking with people, talking out of turn, which means not giving a person your ear, which is those are things that are so important because it's all part of respect, how we engage, how we respect one another. Some of the most beautiful videos I love to watch on TikTok, for example, are the ones where they show couples getting married and the man crying or the fathers crying as they're giving away their daughters in marriage. I'm sure most of you have seen those videos. And it comes with a very beautiful song. And it goes something like, I don't know the words because it's like maybe in Spanish, I don't know what language, but it goes, the sound is like, do 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 do. I'm sure you guys have heard it. And every time you see a father walking his daughter down and giving his hand, no, the hand, giving her hand into handing her over to her spouse, handing her over to the groom. And you see the father, turn around and weep. He weeps because of the loss that he feels of his daughter. And not just the loss, but also the fear maybe that he has, that he's handing over his daughter forever and ever into the hands of another man. And he's not sure if he can trust that man to look after his daughter the same way he did. Yeah. I tell you, other times you also see a woman walk in with her beautiful bridal gown, and then you see her groom, on the other hand, is crying. And I'm like, you mean men are crying? Eh? This is amazing. The man is so filled up with emotion because of all the preparation and, mental, spiritual, physical preparation and stress it took for them to get to that point. That when he finally sees the result, he's just overcome with emotion. Yeah. And this is the beauty of relationships, the beauty of love. And why is it that those videos have so many thousands of views if indeed marriage is so irrelevant? Why is it filled with so many views? Why is it that people say, another person was saying on TikTok today that they want to get into a relationship, they want to love another person without looking stupid. I wish I could just love another person. The secret really is that I really want to love another person without looking like a fool, without looking stupid. And he's just written that up. and is back towards, you know. And I'm like, you know, it's true that the issue of being vulnerable, it's almost impossible to love or to fall in love without looking silly. You do look ridiculous, actually, sadly. Yeah. You look ridiculous to the outside world, but it doesn't matter. What it is, it's what you share between the two of you. Yeah. And I think that we should not be stealing people's time. Don't steal people's time. Don't make it like your life's work, your life's journey, to go around telling people to stop having children and stop getting married. It's none of your business. That's what I also tell them. Whenever I get onto those spaces, I tell them, look, go find yourself a better job. It's not your job to tell people whether to get married, I mean, to go and not get married, to go and not have children, that they're stupid to get children. You're stupid to get married. You know, marriage is a waste of time, it's a waste of emotion, you know. And that shows somebody who is completely emotionally dysregulated, and for sure that person should not get married, absolutely not, because they are not ready for a relationship, they're not ready for children, they're not ready for the responsibility that comes with having the life of another person in your hands. Because, by the way, you know, there are many ways to kill a cat, and one of the ways to do it is emotionally. You can actually drive somebody to despair and destruction and depression and sadness, to the point where they actually are dead while they're still alive. Yeah, it's possible to do that. It's possible to get into a relationship where you are married to the wrong person, and this person literally drains you of your joy, drains you of your happiness, drains you of everything that you consider your life, of who you are, to the point where you don't even know who you are. That I've experienced that, but not in marriage, in relationships. I've been in a relationship, one or two or three, where I wonder to myself, who am I? Yeah. Where have I gone? How can I get myself back? You know, because you cannot believe how desperately evil some people are. They are evil. Some people are truly evil. Evil walks around us. But that is the reason why, you know, it's very important not to make those decisions for marriage alone. Never make them alone. Always make them with your creator, with prayer. Prayer, very important, prayer, you know. And that's why prayer for a purpose. Have never understood wokeism. Okay, they're talking about that. I thought I saw that they wrote something else. Yeah. So all I can say is, you know, balanced marriages, independence versus interdependence. Your independence is still very important. Who you are is important. It's not okay to lose your identity in marriage. It's not okay to put your ambitions and your hopes and dreams on the back burner for your spouse, or for a reason that is, or for a period that is too long, because at some point you're going to get dissatisfied with the relationship. When it comes to interdependence, emotional regulation is very important. The idea that you can actually talk to your partner about every single thing on your mind is actually a fairy tale. You can't. You can't overburden a person with every single thing that is in your head. Yeah, it's too much. Human beings are not God. Yeah. So that's one of the biggest problems, that they say, oh, he's my best friend. I tell him everything that is in my mind, you know, and that is the biggest mistake that women make. They try to make, many women, many wives try to make their husbands their girlfriends. No, that is not his role. He can't manage. He simply cannot process our emotions. Women, we speak 25,000 words. Men only speak 5,000 because they can only process 5,000. Now, if you tell him 25,000 words and he can only process 5,000, you're just going to frustrate the guy. And he's going to go out there and look for other men who speak 5,000 words. And the rest of the words are going to be drank over a beer bottle. Mm? And you'll be left in the house talking to your TV and watching your African Niger cinema by yourself, or Nollywood, or whatever it is you like to watch. Yeah, it's true. Or getting on the phone with your friend. Don't try to make your spouse your female friend. Don't try to make your spouse your male friend. Recognize the differences between the genders. We are different, but we are different, but we are compatible. And, you know, the same thing with men, that they should stop being overly analytical and logical with women. Yeah, let's not say logical with women, because women are very logical, by the way. But don't be so like what I can say with men. Don't be so short with women. Women need women need detail. Yeah, don't try and treat women like like they're men, like you could just say one or two words and walk away and think that you've had a conversation with your wife. No, I'm sorry, you can't just say good morning honey, kiss her and say good night, I mean goodbye, see you later. That's not good enough. You need to try and work on your communication skills. Try to communicate with your wife. The same thing with a woman is the issue of the man. Also, when it comes to talking to a man, try to talk one subject at a time. Yeah, don't bombard men with so many different subjects. Susan, why are you laughing? It's true.
Because my son tells me, to, tell me, Mom, one thing at a time. Do you want me to do all those things? You have to tell me one thing at a time. I'm not able to. Yeah, you've told me too many things. One thing at a time.
Do you know what? I didn't even have to be told, because my son would just look at me in total shock. Like, what did you just say? What did you just, he would just look at me like, I think being a mother to a son is one of the greatest gifts. And also being a father to a daughter is one of the greatest gifts, because you really understand, or even an uncle to a niece, or an uncle to a daughter. It's very important to understand the nature, or our natures are so different and yet so alike, but we are really different. And if we can just respect each other in those spaces and understand that a man cannot process too many things, women, they can't. Don't overdo it. Don't expect so much. That's this issue of managing your expectations with men. You have to really learn to manage your expectations with men. Men will go off and do what makes them happy. Just let them do it. Let them go and do what they need to do to be happy. Yeah. But also, one thing at a time, and also at the right time. That's very important. The same thing with women. Guys, if you just don't talk to women, we assume you don't like us, because our girlfriends talk to us all the time. Yeah. So if you like, at least, even if you don't talk to me, at least sit there and listen, or pretend to listen. Even if you doze off, it's okay. We'll understand, because at least you're there. But just be there. Yeah. Just be there. It's important just to be there, so that you're a sounding board to a woman. Yeah, because if you're somebody like Queen Mo's spouse, I swear, you're going to go through a lot, because you're going to be a sounding board. Let me tell you a little story. There's a time we were driving to Mombasa. I don't know if I told you guys this story before. My husband and I woke up here in Nairobi at about 5 o'clock. We were very newlyweds. And I said, "Oh, I want to show you our beautiful city of Mombasa. Let's go see the ocean. It's absolutely gorgeous." So we decided to do the drive. We woke up at 4 in the morning, and I was on the steering wheel. I can drive. I drove all the way. He doesn't drive when he's in this country. So I drove all the way. And I realized when we got to Mtitonde, this gentleman had hardly said anything. But I was talking. I was having this conversation, And he was hardly talking. He was just going, mm-hmm, yeah, mm-hmm. Always agreeable. And then we got to Mtitonde, then we got to Hunter's Lodge, we got to wherever, sat down, had a meal. And then I started to realize this man hasn't talked. He hasn't talked much. Okay. Oh, I wasn't really realizing. I think I was talking and I wasn't paying attention to the fact that he wasn't talking much. Okay. So I got on and we went all the way to Mombasa. And when we arrived at Mombasa, my husband said, "Wow, you can talk. You can really talk." I was so embarrassed. I was like, "What do you mean I can really talk? I wasn't even talking." He said, "You talked all the way from Nairobi to Mombasa by yourself. I listened to you talk to yourself. You told yourself stories. You told stories. You told stories all the way." And all I did was just say, mm-hmm. And he told me that what he did, he would fall asleep and then wake up and hear me still talking. I will fall asleep again and wake up and I'm still talking. That has been the greatest running joke, I swear. And I cannot tell you that he wasn't there, because maybe in his sleep he was saying, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. He had practiced the art of presence. So I assumed he was there. Yeah, because he was obviously there. Because he wasn't totally quiet. I think he was actually sleeping and going, mm-hmm, all the way to Mombasa. That was a 7 hour journey. Crazy, you know? Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. At
So,
least practice the art of presence, guys. Yeah. Fake it till you make it, but just pretend that you're there. Yeah. Okay. Now, prayer for purpose is saying marriage is a thing. Oh, prayers for purpose. Our messages are not showing. Really? Seriously? Why are they not showing? Prayers for purpose. They're not showing? Oh no, he's sent many messages. I hope okay, it says marriage is a thing we can all wish for our children, but especially daughters. If this is not working, maybe domestic violence, especially then, it's time to move on because this is now death. Totally agree with you. Prayers for purpose. 100% agree with you that marriage is a thing we can wish for our children. But especially when it comes to daughters, if this is not working, maybe, for example, domestic violence, it's time to move because it could actually mean death. Absolutely. We have already given our disclaimer when it came to that, and I think we should continue to state it here. We're not saying marriage by all means. We are saying healthy marriage relationships, healthy, safe marriage relationships. Anytime that you feel threatened by violence or abuse, or when you see a person is of hot temper, be careful, super careful. You might even want to install cameras in your house. Yeah, because you never really know what they're doing when you're sleeping, man. Where? You know, they say that intimate partners are the ones who take lives. You never know what somebody's doing. So it's very important to, you know, the red flags. Susan is very good at talking about that. I'll let Susan handle that one. Okay, about the issue of no marriage by all means. And then the second one, let me see the other thing that Press for Purpose is saying. Um, Marriage is a thing that we can, yeah, no, this says no, it's not marriage is a thing. Try to invite more viewers to discuss these important subjects. I feel you can do much more as a channel. There are many people who want to discuss these issues. Give us a heads up on schedule, like time and date. Thank you, Press for Purpose. We usually here on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Today we've made an exception because I was not able to be here yesterday. But obviously, it looks like Saturdays and Sundays are important days as well. Usually, Sundays we're supposed to talk mental health issues, you know. And if Susan is available, we'll do it tomorrow. Okay. But today we had said every Friday we'll talk about relationships, but it looks like Saturdays should be relationships. Also, you guys help us to invite people to our show. When you see us coming on board, try and help us to invite us. But those are good points there, Press for Purpose. What I'll do, I'll try to put in the invitation earlier, maybe a day earlier, and see if more people can come on board. I apologize for that. Yeah. We do need more people discussing these issues. Yeah. I hope I haven't missed any other points that you made up here. Press for Purpose, and I really, really appreciate you. And by the way, are you aware that you can come into the studio? Are you interested in coming to the studio? Yeah, let me know. Let us know with Susan. Susan, do you have anything to say about what Press for Purpose is saying about marriage is a thing that we can all wish for our children, but especially daughters. But if this is not working, maybe like for domestic violence, especially, it's time to move on because otherwise the risk is death.
yeah, that's a very, very true statement that the risk can be death, um, because the extreme result of domestic violence is death. And it could be not just the death of the spouse; it could be actually the death of the entire family. um we that's those are stories. We see reports, they're not stories, real reports from all over the world of this happening, the world over, when the marriage has gone really, really, really bad. And um like in England, they've done a lot of research. And this particular researcher, she's been able to, through her research, detect danger points, and been able to reduce the number of you know deaths occurring in the family, the intimate partner homicide and sexual abuse also. So they've been doing a lot of research to reduce it. So they've been able to flag certain behaviors. And one of the things people need to do is to exercise their rights to report. I know in the context of marriage, when it happens once, when the violence happens once, there's a tendency to forgive, and not document it or have a record of it at all, uh, and let it go. And then there's a pattern of behavior that perpetuates over a period of time and becomes more and more difficult to report it or to do anything about it. But one thing I would advise is that you most certainly need to start documenting those incidents. If there's a physical violence, to get a medical report, something like that. And then when you're ready, report it to the police, because you could actually prevent a worse crime happening, and also get out of it, get out of such a marriage, because that is actually not a marriage. That is a very dangerous place you are in, and you need to keep yourself safe. You do not, if you have children, you do not want to pass that legacy to them of accepting abusive conduct, or even for them to live with uh, the fact that one spouse unalived the other. Um, when I was practicing law, and I think I've shared this, I was doing what you call a watching brief, where the male spouse unalived his wife, the husband unalived his wife in the presence of the child. The child was the eyewitness. She was actually testifying in court against her father and saying what he did to the mother. And that was, for me, one of the most difficult things to see, because the child was asked to identify who she saw attacking the mother, and she had to point at her father and say it was him. You can imagine the effect of that now on the relationship from there. Can such a father really have a relationship with his daughter? He was jailed, right? But can he ever really have a normal relationship with his daughter? She witnessed him not hearing, she saw it happening. What type of trauma is she suffering? That type of legacy. So we need to think about some of these things to try to get out of spaces before they become completely uh, you know disastrous, and you're passing on whatever is going on. After that is something terrible. I've heard some people saying, telling their, because of the nature of my work, when I was doing a lot of family law, um, children appreciating the fact that the mother removed the children from that abusive situation, and actually thanking their mother for removing them from that sort of situation, despite the fact that the stigma of you raising your children alone, of being a single mother or single parent, or a divorcee, um, is there, but it was a decision that had to be made for the safety of your family. So even when we're talking about some of these things, you can see in the social media, one other thing that's really uh, not so good, and perhaps discourages people, um, when they're thinking about getting married or having children, is the stigma that comes with being a single mother. You can see some people say, oh, children raised by single parents are, badly behaved and stuff like that. So there's some stereotyping that is there. And it's really, you know, and they don't speak up. You will not find them speaking up in these social media platforms, saying that's not a true statement. So this statement goes unchecked, that children raised by a single parent are usually badly behaved and they end up like this. Even in school, you'll hear the headmaster speaking that way. And yet you might find the child who has scored the highest in the school as actually raised by a single parent. So there's been some sort of like stereotyping, which is really, really bad, and perhaps discourages people from wanting to either get into marriage because of fear of that, or being a child themselves who was raised as a single parent, and knowing the stigma that they were subjected to, as they the type of discrimination they were subjected to, as they went through different phases. And those are those things that we really need to push back against. The other thing I just wanted to raise was, somebody asked about wokeism. um Wokeism, is one of these things. It's when the people hold sacred matters of gender, race, and other things. So when I'm saying they're holding them sacred, they are taking those issues to extremes. So the issue of gender, uh, where we're now hearing in some countries there, I don't know, 100 genders, something like that. And we started from a place where there were only two, and now there are over 100 genders. It's very confusing, and they're continuing to grow. So there's extremism. There's a lot of extremism. The issue of race again, extremism. Uh, and things like that. So you end up with a situation. For instance, we talk about gender because that's where the clearer picture will be. um, is we find a situation where men are now engaging in women's sports, and they're being applauded by women to engage in women's sports. There's some women who are supporting men participating in women's sports. We've had the ridiculous thing of in some countries where male rapists who have now declared that they're trans women are now locked up in cells with women. A completely mind-boggling situation when you think about it, because women are being locked up. I mean, they're incarcerated with men who have been accused or facing charges of rape, and because they have declared they are now trans women, they are now placed in a different place. So and the danger and of all this is that, like for women, we are losing our place. We're becoming more and more invisible as a result of some of these things when we talk about the gender issue, because you find that trans men are competing for women spaces. They're competing in our sports. They're competing even for scholarships. They're competing for, affirmative action. They're competing in the places where women are eligible for certain things. They're competing with women for women grants. In sports like cycling, they're the ones winning. And a lot of these things in sports, the women, the sportsmen and women, whoever wins gets some sort of trophy. They get money as well, and that's their living. That's the living that they're making. So it's affected people in such a negative way. Um, and even for Elon Musk's child, the one who has decided to change their gender, the truth of the matter, this is all superficial, because he cannot change what his chromosomes are. He cannot change that. He's still a male. He's still a male. If they do any research on his body, if they check, they'll find his registered. I mean, he's a male, even though he has done whatever top surgery or bottom surgery, as they call it. He's still a male. You can't change. You cannot change your gender, and that's the truth of it. There was an athlete called Sarah Walsh, who an American athlete, and they discovered after she passed away that she was actually male, because they did an autopsy to find out what had, the cause of death. And in the process, that's when they discovered, when they took her samples and all that, discovered she was a male, but she lived as a female. you know. Um, and obviously, in some cases, like in the developing world, the ways of detecting who's a male and who's female, is not as refined as it is in other countries, where they're able to tell this. There's an issue here. We're not seeing the genitalia is not well visible, so we can't tell whether it's male or female, whether this is a male child or a female child, or whatever. And then they're able to do tests, and they can tell this is a male child and this is a female child. But here in Africa, they will just observe and say this is a male, this is a female, and yet the person they're saying is a female may have what they call undescended testes. So the testes are there, and so they will develop when they hit puberty. They'll start to develop masculine features, and stuff like that. So anyway, what they've done, the woke people have taken all these things to such extremes, where you find uh, actions being taken, and it's very confusing for the more sober-minded members of society, who who like to have things in a clearer boxes. So it's just sort of like a nebulous situation. And I think for me, I think my own observation of why the US, some of the issues that got Trump his votes was this wokeism. People had generally had enough of it, you know, had generally had enough of it, and it didn't matter whether you were conservative or a Republican. They just had enough of it. And is it no a Democrat or a Republican in the U.S.? They just had enough of it. It was affecting their children in school. The child goes to school as Jane, comes home as Tom. The teachers can't say anything about it, and stuff like that. Teachers being sacked because they've refused to call a child by a name they want to be called. I saw a lady, she won a lot of money in the US because she refused. She said it went against her Christian values. She said, I cannot, comply with these rules. And she was, she was awarded a lot of money. So that's what wokeism is. I've told you many stories to explain what it is, but it is actually something that is very anti even marriage. If you analyze it, it's anti that. Just saying people should live in some sort of free form. You just do whatever you want to do, and nobody's really responsible at the end of it.
Who is going to take care of all the children outside there? Are they all going to end up in children's homes? What are we going to do? Because people are going to have kids. What's going to happen to them? Where are they going to grow up? Who's going to be responsible for going out and fending for the family? People are, again, we are in a world where we are filled with very many lazy, sorry to have to say, lazy men. These are very lazy, toxic men going around saying, don't get married. Do you know why? Many of them don't want to provide. They don't want to provide, and they're embarrassing the men who want to provide, who understand that that is their role, not only their role, that they are actually equipped to provide. Men are equipped to provide, to be providers of their home, but it's as if that they lack their confidence. They no longer have confidence that they can provide, and therefore they go and mock women for getting married or wanting to get married, because they just want to try to see if they can just delete this desire in women to have provider husbands. It's only normal. It's only natural. It's very natural. Let me present something for you guys right now. Let me share my screen for the first time in a while. Yeah. So let me show you something here.
Biblically
Okay.
speaking,
Um, let me make it. Yeah. I hope you can see. Can you see it? Can you see it, Susan? Make it a bit bigger. Yeah. Okay. So let's play.
You have to make it bigger. Yeah.
Has it? Yeah, I have to make it bigger. Okay, fine. So let me stop sharing that one, obviously. Um, let me go back, exit the full screen. Oh, I'm not an expert at this, guys, but generally what we're saying is this is a pastor here in Kenya who is like literally livid. He's pretty upset. He's not very happy about the fact that many men don't want to provide for women. And it's unfortunate because no, I think I can't find it. A lot of men don't want to provide anymore. They've given up the whole idea of providing for their women, and they've decided not to provide anymore. It's not their responsibility to provide. I don't know. I don't know why. For some reason, sometimes when I try to share TikTok videos, it's not very easy. For some reason, they don't actually show up. Let me try once more and give it a shot. Hoping that you can see. Can you see, Susan? Can you see that?
I can see. Is it a video? Just play the video.
No, I haven't played it, but can you see what's on the screen there? You can, huh?
It says
Okay.
a man should provide.
Okay.
part
Can
of
you
the
hear that now?
husband is to love the wife, love
Yeah.
the family, and provide. He
I
is
can
the
hear.
home gyri. If he does not love and he does not provide, he has rebelled. The punishment of man was to work, sweat, and make sure that he feeds his family. My community where I come from, you don't count woman's money. But I really wonder when you see a grown man, mshahara imefika, unaweka kwa meza, unaambia bibi yako leta yako ekelea hapa. Are you mad? You are not a full man, you are a quarter man, even an eighth of a man. How do you count woman's money? How do you count woman's money? Are you crazy? hata pesa yake mimi sinaamini. Unataka kuona kwa nini? Go and work hard. God aliyekupatia hiyo responsibility of home diary. Was he a fool? He knew he has inbuilt capacity in you. He has inbuilt capacity in you to take care of that family. So if your wife is contributing to the daily budget of the house, is a favor. She's just helping. Because the Bible says a what? Helper. Sio kitu ambayo sasa mnasimama mnaulizana. The fact that your wife is contributing to the budget of your house does not give you the audacity to now raise up your voice, because this time around she has not brought the money. Nonsense. What a man. Oh, na hii uchumi ya Kasongo watu wanasaidiana, si ndio? Si ni kusaidiana. Wacha kuweka sauti yako juu, ongea kama mtu anafanya nini, anasaidiwa. Yani mpaka mmeandikiana, child number 1 wife pays school fees, child number 2 you are crazy. Biblically speaking, the work of the husband is to love the wife, love the family, and provide. He is the home diary. If he does not love and he does not provide, he has rebelled. The punishment of man was to work, sweat.
Okay, guys, what did you think about that? What do you think about that, Susan? Well, okay,
Yeah.
let me just respond to that. First of all, let me respond by responding to the responses which were in the comments in the stream. Some people, some guys were pretty pissed off. They were not very happy by that message, which is not which is not surprising. The first comment was that, oh, now women are going to now start contributing, a lot of money to this man's church. All those women are going to start contributing to that church. That was the first comment. The second comment was like, okay, but where does it actually say in the Bible that a man is supposed to be the provider? And then he says, here it is. I don't know, 2 Timothy something. A man who does not provide for his household is worse than an infidel. And he was quiet, The guy was silenced. So many men, exactly what this pastor is saying. This pastor is saying there is no excuse, whatever the economy, it is the responsibility of men to provide for their families. And this is one of the biggest problems. This is one of the reasons why a lot of women are actually filing for divorce. A lot. Because very many men have failed to provide for their families. And they have refused to provide for their families. And they expect their wives to not just help them, but to actually provide for their families. They expect their wives to work many hours, go out there and hustle just the same way that he hustles, if not more. There are very many women who are working 2 jobs to try to provide for their families, and they have husbands in the house. Yeah, many women will do the job. They'll do the job, but after some time, there'll be a sense of resentment towards the man, because the expectation is that men are supposed to provide. It is kind of like in the woman's DNA that a man should provide, protect, okay? A man should provide and protect the family. They should. It is in them. And what the pastor is actually telling men, which I liked about his message, is that men should take it up as an honor. It's a huge honor for men to provide, because that is where their power is. Men who are providers have a lot of power. I used to be, when I was a single mom, I was the sole provider of my family. Really, I was. Unless my parents want to help here and there, or somebody wants to help, which was very rare, I was the sole provider. Man, that hustle was hard. It was tough. And then when I got married, it was so difficult for me to stop being the main provider. Do you know, it was a fight. I used to provide just like now. I saw my husband like he was my son or something. I started providing for him as well. Oh, God, there, start looking for things. Oh, let's do this. Let's do this. I go buy clothes. The same way I buy clothes and things for my son, I was doing it for my husband. One day, my husband sat me down and told me, you know what? Some things are my responsibility. And he was upset. And I was like, why are you upset, man? You should be happy. But it was so difficult to let go, because the power that he gave me to provide, my provision capacity was giving me power in my household. Yeah, I got respect from my son. I got respect from people out there. I got respect from, my house help. I got respect from my colleagues at work because I was a provider. I got respect from my family because I was providing. There's some sort of respect that you get as a provider that you don't want to, to let go of when you get married as a woman, especially if you're a single mom at once. And this is one thing that, yet, this is something that you really are also yearning for as a woman, that you tend to respect your provider. You respect that person who's going to go out there and hustle for you, hustle for the family. So actually, I relaxed. And when I relaxed, I saw hubby was very happy. And I had to just make do with his provision, even if I knew that there's some things I could probably do better, I just made do with it. And eventually you realize that you're comfortable, actually. You start asking yourself, hey, why was I killing myself here? It wasn't even good for my health. It wasn't even good for me psychologically to be the provider. It kind of allows the femininity in you to come out. Yeah. It allows me to actually stay in my feminine and to concentrate on other things, yeah, which are important. Also, they're also part of the support system. So it doesn't mean that you don't help, but it just means that you don't have the primary responsibility. That's all. So I think that these messages need to go out there. And for women, when it comes to choosing and balancing marriage, I think women should stop overdoing it. A lot of women are overworking themselves. A lot of women are overdoing it. That's imbalanced. That's a very imbalanced situation. Yeah. I think also we can temper ourselves and decide not to be too materialistic, and also to be make do with less. If that means that if that means that you balance your marriage, then you do it like that, like, instead of eating out every single day, excuse me, instead of going out to eat like all the time, going out to shop all the time, using credit cards to do what, start learning to live within your means and enjoy actually the time that you spend together with your partner more than actually spending and being materialistic, sorry. Yeah. So, and I also want to say that when it comes to balanced marriages, independence versus interdependence, there will always be a yearning. For most women, there will always be a yearning for interdependence because it comes with relaxation. It comes with being able to breathe, So there'll always be that. And also with men, there will always be that need for interdependence. So don't ignore it. I would say, don't ignore it. Just seek your creator, seek God. Because I say sometimes what you're yearning for is out there, it's the energy you're giving out. That yearning energy will actually result in something. So I think that it just depends. If you deny that it's there, then you can stop it from actually manifesting. I really believe in the power of manifestation. So I don't want to keep this too long. I think it's already quite late, and Susan, I know, has a long day tomorrow. But want to say thank you, guys. And Susan, would you like to say some few last words, and then we can close off now? Thank you all, and by the way, thank you very much for your support to the channel. Fear is saying this is important. Some women are working 60 to 80 hours a week. That has a big impact on her relationship and family. Very true. Women have collapsed, especially in the diaspora. So many women are overworking themselves, working themselves to death. Ladies, please, I want to tell you, this is not balanced. This is not
yeah.
balanced. Fear has seconded me on this because both of us have had long discussions about this, especially women from
Mm,
Nigeria. I'm going to name the countries. Nigerian women, especially. Yeah. Listen to me, Nigerian women. It's okay to work, but it's not okay to overwork. It really is not. Same thing with Kenyan
yeah.
women. Kenyan women really overwork. And sometimes, yes, you feel like you want your family to have everything. But really, you need to look at the society that you're living in, especially when you're abroad. Even Kenyan women in this particular country of Kenya overwork themselves to death, to the bone. And we've seen it with our grandmothers. And it's not actually a pretty sight when you see that so many women have developed bone problems, osteoporosis, problems with their backs, problems, many women also die young, and they're not supposed to die young. Actually, women are supposed to outlive men, by the way, yeah, by 7 years. Really, we're supposed to live long. We have strong DNAs. So if you see a woman is dying young, you better know that she's stressed. Women are also developing lifestyle diseases such as cancer. And these are lifestyle diseases, guys. We have to be very careful because many of these are caused by stress, imbalance, metabolic problems. And so we have to be very, very careful to balance our marriages. We're supposed to enjoy our marriages. We're supposed to enjoy family, enjoy time with your children, and enjoy just being that person in that home because you're irreplaceable. Totally. Susan, let me let you talk and say the last words.
No, certainly an important subject that we've discussed today, because we would love to see people taking marriage more seriously, thinking hard before they engage in it, sorting out the expectations before, just taking those steps when you're choosing your marriage partner, just to look out for red flags, so that you don't end up in a potentially dangerous situation. And certainly how to manage conflict. How are we managing conflict? Because definitely with two adults in the home, you're going to have arguments, you're going to have disagreements. So it's important for you to figure out how to communicate and how to manage areas of conflict. Um, Communication must be respectful, must be honest. There should be integrity there. And there are many ways of resolving conflict, including mediation. If you don't get a respectable somebody you both mutually respect, to come and have a word, your if you're people of faith, your ministers, your pastors, to come and help to mediate the situation. So that it's really important for that to be done. But please articulate your expectations of a marriage from the set go from the get go, and don't make them start changing in the middle and make different demands which were not there in the beginning. Uh, you know, so it definitely was something that we'd like to see more of. We want to encourage people to get engaged in it. um, and it's a wonderful institution. Um, in the church that I go to, we celebrate people's marriages, and what they do is they have flowers, the church flowers, and we ask them. They're asked to stand up, and people have been married 50, 60 years, and they're there, and it works. Just a commitment people have made to one another, and they're determined for it to work.
Ah, that's really lovely. If your church celebrates people who have been married 50, 60 years, wow. That's my dad and mom. They were married 60 years before dad. In fact, dad left us on 1 week shy of his 60th wedding anniversary. 60 years. 1964. Wow. There's times when we were growing up, we used to ask them, don't you guys get bored of each other? They say, bored? Why? No, we don't get bored of each other. They don't actually get bored of each other. Maybe, they might once in a while want to maybe murder each other, who knows, but they don't get bored. And boredom is not really the word that they use. Susan, there's Press for Purposes saying at some point, sorry, missed this one. They said, heard what you said, Susan. There's a stigma in raising a child by a single parent, but a single mother can bring peace in the house and just focus on education and can lead to a great leader in the future.
Yeah, very true. I mean, that's a stigma that has, and it's artificial. It's artificial. It's not the cause of children of single parents are not the delinquents of this world. Some of them are great leaders of this world, and it's just about how the child has been raised. And that stigma needs to be brought down because it's based on wrong information, uh, probably not well researched either. um, yeah, so I agree with you.
I think I'd like to end on Prayers for Purpose statement at the beginning, where they said, loneliness comes with perversity, immoral thoughts and deeds, etc. It's a state of mind that now someone starts doubting themselves and even doing things that they never imagined. This leads to mental issues. And that's the other side of marriage. That if one is experiences loneliness, loneliness too much, it can also lead to some sort of mental health problems. And sometimes, the loneliness gap can only be filled by a partner. And I want to say that really sincerely, these things are at our finger, they're within our reach. But many people have put a mental block. Yeah. Many people have put a mental block, and they believe that they cannot find a partner. The trouble, I would say, with balanced marriages or independence versus independent, this lonely thing, is that we probably cast our net not wide enough. We need to cast our net wide, very wide, because the whole world is our field. The whole world is available to us. And now we have the internet. We have absolutely no reason to be casting our net right there in our village every day or within our circles. It's out there, you know, the person is out there. And if not, at least, always fill your time with time with people. Try to spend as much time with other people as much as possible. We are here to commune. It doesn't have to be a husband also, by the way. It can also be a family member, it could be your, friends and things like that. And talk about it. I think it's very important. Loneliness is actually one of the leading causes of death, and we don't want people dying because of loneliness, and also because of putting barriers where there should be none. Yeah. So, on that note, guys, thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure being with you here. It's been a long night. I wish you a nice weekend, or the rest of whatever weekend is left. Probably see you tomorrow or see you Monday. And yes, we will put in our notification earlier. Please invite other people to come. Thank you, Press for Purpose, for being here. Fia, thank you so much for participating. Louis, hi there. Thank you for participating. We need an update from you. How's the job search going? And Susan, thank you for being there. And all the other people who have given us so many likes and hearts, thank you so much for that. We have 9 hearts and likes, which is a lot for our show. We really appreciate that. It means that this topic is of interest and it's important to people. So let's continue talking about it. And yeah, have a nice evening, guys. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. And thank you, everybody in the comment section. Have a good night. Thank you,
Yeah.
Susan. Good night
Bye.
and
Thank you.
goodbye and good
Bye.
day. Bye bye.